Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the Sacred Blueprint for Our New Earth interview series. We've got hundreds of people joining from different parts of the globe to hear from the world's leading earth energy experts. I'm Aisha Rose Melody Hassan, and I am your host for this series. I am an architect, alchemical healer, and the creator of the Sacred Blueprint, a cutting edge vessel of courses and programs for property owners and designers to birth their dream sanctuaries through a new modality that bridges spirit and architecture. This series is a response to a call I've been hearing on very high volume from Gaia, Mother Earth, and the nature spirits. It's about exploring what's possible when we partner with the wisdom of nature to build healing sanctuaries for our future. Whether these sanctuaries are your homes, your gardens, or communities you're planning, or even visions for the city, the question is, how can we collaborate with nature and the spirit of the land to develop practical and conscious solutions? All of our awesome earth energy experts, our guest speakers who have joined this circle, will share from their years of uh, experience and knowledge in teaching and designing with earth energies. They'll be sharing all of this to answer this question. Now, before we move on, I'd love to thank Geometric Models for sponsoring this event and aligning with the impulse of the Sacred Blueprint. It is such an honor to be collaborating with this superb research group who's dedicated to investigating Mother Nature's sacred geometries. If you're interested in sacred geometry, modeling, and design, then please check out their website at www.geometricmodels.com for educational tools. Now, before I introduce our next guest, we will open up the bonus Q&A session at the end at about 50 minutes. And the Q&A button is on the bottom right-hand corner of the Zoom bar. You click on it and you can type your question to our guest. We do ask you hold your questions until the end when we open it up, okay? You have received your login information to access the limited time recordings. If you haven't received it via email, check your spam and promotions folders. The recordings are up for 48 hours as of upload, and my team does inform you when it's up on the site, okay? And the expiry date is written in there. So our next guest, she is Montclair, New Jersey, just outside of New York City, based architect and designer. She is what's super special about her is that she's also a yoga teacher, and she's been practicing and teaching for many years. And she brings a new the spirit of yoga consciousness and a new consciousness into her design practice, both in leading her team and leading her clients, guiding her clients towards spaces that feed their souls. I love how she says it. Her and her team create spaces that help their clients to grow into their futures. This is so inspiring, and I can't wait to find out more. She's also her firm has also been recognized for various works in sustainable development, and also been awarded LEED silver and gold certifications. So let's welcome in Rachael Grochowski. So honored to have you with us. Hi, Rachael. Welcome in.
Hi.
Hi
Hi.
there.
It's so
Nice
nice
to
to be
have,
here. Thank you.
yeah, nice to have you. We're so honored. Um, yeah, I don't know where to begin. There's just so much about your story I feel that the audience would really benefit from. And I'd love to begin with, you know, you talked about a critical turning point in your life when we last spoke about when you there was this point where you were considering to give up architecture and to fully dedicate yourself to practicing and teaching yoga. Uh, what made you change your mind? What made you continue with the path of architecture? And now you're leading, is it a 12, 13
Mhm.
person office? What's the story there, Rachel?
Yeah, so actually, it's interesting that I actually considered leaving the industry a couple of times. And I think when I really dive into it, it was about values and it was about purpose.
Hmm.
And, I think architecture and design is obviously about creation, right? Like that's what we're doing. Whether it's helping somebody create their home or their business or their retreat. It's all about the creation. And I think for many of us, there are these different points where we start to question, like, what's the value? Like, what are we contributing? So, that was an ongoing conversation, I think, in my head. And I kind of settled at some point that, what I was actually doing is I was helping people's families because I was doing a lot of residential work at that time. And I would get feedback that, oh, now that we all sit at this table together because of this lovely, space that you've created, we're communicating with each other more. But that just really wasn't enough, right? So at the same time, my first yoga class was when I was in second grade. And I, throughout my life, had continued to return to the yoga. It was just part of what centered me. And so there was a point maybe about 10 years ago where I started to really increase my studies and my knowledge and my learning and my lifestyle into sort of living the yoga, and my purpose was very much wrapped up in understanding myself and humanity through the lens of yoga. And so this part of my life was growing. And at the same time, I had, started my firm and we were growing and we were getting more interesting projects. And so it was like, I felt like my life was kind of going like this. And I just had this feeling that I was going to have to make a choice. I couldn't be fully in with either one of them if they were both going in different directions. And I I kept asking myself every time I'd be with my friends who my community, my yoga community, my spiritual community, I would say, we don't live near each other, so that might be every 3 to 6 months. I would say, like, I'm just not really sure. Pretty soon I'm going to have to make a choice. And then there came this moment, and I literally, like, I asked intuitives, what should
Consulted everybody, right? Yeah,
I
the
consulted
stars.
everybody. What should I be doing? And then there was this moment where I started to see them come together. And I started to see that the real first moment was that I had designed this experiential space for a festival that we had here in Montclair that was really about wellness. And I infused my design skills into that space where people were doing things like we had this tree that had little tags on it and it was like, take what you need. And so the tree, there were some tags that would say compassion, or they might say safety, or they could say lots of different words. And so, the idea was that there was a wellness infused into this experience. And that was obviously that was like a week-long event, but it started to make me realize that actually this could all be one. That design is spiritual, that design is about wellness, that design is it's, yes, it's contributing to people's conversations and connection, somehow I wanted it to be more, and that it actually is. It's not just about shelter, although obviously that's critical too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. I'm so happy you stayed on track, because we need architects like you who are weaving the spirit, the breath, weaving the breath into our spaces, into architecture. And what I love about you, um, from what I know about you, and I'm sure the audience would love to benefit, is that not only are you weaving this into the way you design, but it's also how you're leading your team. Um, can you talk a
Mhm.
little bit about that as well before we get into some of your projects, and how you're talking about maybe your more specific design approach?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it's really important. I think, so many of us are, we talk about intentionality and we talk about authenticity, right? And we're searching for, like, what does that mean? There are words. But again, it comes back to like living the yoga, and that doesn't mean just me living the yoga. That means this expression of myself, which is my team, also being a reflection of those values of that of that effort. And so, you know, on the one level, like on the very simple level, I share this information with my team. Just as an example, we have, a library in our office of books that are not about design or architecture. They're like the Four Agreements, or I mean, there are all these different books that are kind of inviting people to start to think about how we show up in the world,
Wow.
because it's not just about me, it's about how I relate to everybody else, and it's about how they relate to each other and how we relate to our clients, right? So, also I do begin, and this is a little bit newer, but I've started beginning our meetings with a Dharma talk. So it's just an evolution of my yoga teaching, where I would start the class with a short Dharma talk. And so I might be talking about truth, and why it's important to be completely truthful with our clients. That little teeny lie that might be like, oh, I was just about to respond to your email, is it worth it? Those are really teeny tiny little bits, but those are seeds that are planted in either the client's mind of doubt, or in our own mind of our ability, right? So we talk about those types of things in the beginning, in our weekly meeting. And it might seem a little bit preachy to some, but it's an expression of the value that I have. It's a reverence for each other, right? um, and when we moved to a new office in October. I brought our team over during construction to the new space, and invited everybody to write their intentions. Like, I want them to be part of the evolution of the office. I want them to feel valued, and to put their dreams into the studio. And so everyone on the concrete floor, wrote their intentions. And we did this ritual around it. And I felt like, you know it was such a, again, for some people this might seem a little bit out there, but everyone suddenly felt much more connected to each other, to our space, to our success, and to our collaboration commitment to each other. Because it's not the success of a business isn't about any individual. It's about the totality, the collection. And I recently had this conversation too, because I want everyone to remember that it doesn't matter if you're an intern, if you're somebody who has 20 years experience. Everybody's contribution matters. We're all part of it. So those are the kinds of things that I'm doing with the team and talking to them about, to create this essence of like authenticity, all the way from my own studies through the expression of our relationship with our clients and each other.
I love it. And what I'm hearing as well is integrity. I'm hearing like that you're really in your consciousness of building a team with integrity. That becomes this really solid structure, of love, of truth, of soul, of connection. And like I can't imagine, I mean, just these foundations that you're building, how that then magnetizes the right projects to come in, how it magnetizes the right clients to come in, how it magnetizes the right properties, maybe, the right uh, nature spirits, whatever that may be. It just makes so much sense to me that you're really taking care, that you're not doing one thing on one end and then your office is like totally like, how many times have we seen that, right?
Hmm.
In architecture world, where let's say the main architect is preaching one thing, and then behind closed doors it's like some kind of like boot camp slavery kind of. I've experienced that, honestly. So I
Hmm.
just, yeah, huge respect for what you're doing there. um, Everybody, from time to time, I'm muting while Rachel talks, because we've got a huge windstorm and we have really leaky windows. So sometimes I'm on mute. I don't know if everybody can hear the wind, but it's pretty powerful. And Rachel and I, we were just talking before coming on that today's the full moon, and it's also, you said it's the Kali festival in the East Indian.
Holly,
Oh,
the Holly
Hali.
Festival.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
the
thought
Holly
it was
Festival.
Kali. The
No, not the goddess of, not Kali, the
Oh,
goddess.
okay.
No, the Holly Festival. It's the colors, and
Oh,
so
okay. Right
it's
before
it's
spring. Okay. Okay,
it's
got it.
the well, it's actually about, and this is so important right now. It's about the vanishing, the how do you say it? Vanquishing, so ridding of evil,
Oh, okay.
ridding of evil.
Yeah.
And so it's, and so that might mean, like, as we hopefully move towards the end of COVID, it might mean, it's about moving into um, the light and out of the darkness.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I know. I'm now imagining all those, the beautiful pigments and all the
Hmm.
colors being, yeah, that's such a beautiful festival. Amazing.
It really is. Yeah.
So, Rachel, we'd love to dive into some of your projects. Tell us about your approach with your clients, and tell us
Hmm.
about how you weave in the spirit of nature and connect with the land,
Hmm.
whether it's in the city, whether it's in the countryside. We'd love to hear how you're breathing the yoga in your design work.
Hmm. Absolutely. Thanks for that question. I think it's often dependent on the client,
Yeah.
right? Like these principles are always there. Um, and I kind of have to feel out. Sometimes we do have clients who specifically come to us because they've read, that we are infusing this idea of intentional living, this integration into nature, this multi-sensory experience into the design. And then we have other clients who don't necessarily come to us for that, but I lead them through a series of questions. The questions uh, are probably presented differently depending on how they came to us. But they're often questions like, what is your relationship to nature? Where did you grow up?
Uh-huh.
What does your family look like? And this might be, I'm speaking specifically about residential. We do a lot of commercial work too. So if this is a restaurant, it might be, how do you want your, like, what is the premise of your food?
Yeah.
What is the experience, or how do you want your clients or your family to feel? And how do you collaborate with each other? So, we're asking these questions that are leading us to a design essence, right? So, just as an example, I was speaking to a potential client, I guess a week or two ago, and they had read an article about me that was in Forbes, and it was talking about the spirit of
Yeah.
architecture, right? It was talking about, I believe that design is spiritual. I do. And when they read that, they reached out, and what we were discussing is that they both grew up in India, in different parts of India, and and that the land that they were looking at, that they're purchasing, although it's a semi-urban area, is like built into the side of the mountain to some extent. And so it's like being on the in a valley, overlooking the Ganga. And that they wanted to have this essence, like they know they're here in the New York area, but they want to have this multi-sensory experience that can travel them back to the lineage that has brought them to this moment.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, what does that mean for them? And so I asked questions like that, like, what does it mean to you? And what was your experience as a child? And one of them talked about, the smell of the rain as it hit the soil where they grew up. And another one spoke about the materiality, and how that, not necessarily saying they wanted to replicate that, but that is part of the conversation of design in order to get to this idea of the spiritual space, this idea of home as retreat, as it's really an integration of each individual's lineage, which goes beyond our lifetime, right? Like our ancestors live in us, just like the ancestors live in the land.
Yeah.
And so it's all those conversations that lead us through the design process. And sometimes like I said, sometimes I'm much more open about it.
Yeah.
And other times I'm kind of working in the background to
Right.
sort of as the alchemist, right?
Right. Right.
So trying to figure out, like, okay, how can I spin this in? And I often find, even for people who don't necessarily speak the same language, it's the sort of
Yeah.
design language, spiritual design language, I can often read very much from them if I just drop into my body and I read their energy, right? Like it's one of the things that, we during COVID, frankly, have been in our office the majority of the time, because I get so much from my client just by being in the same room. It's
Yeah.
much more difficult to read their energy, you know, um, or read the energy of a space or land, because again, it's all working with energy. It's all
Yeah.
working with energy.
What I love too, from what I'm hearing, is for you too, the process is a lot about asking questions to get to the essence. And what I love about that is the question is this opening up, it's an unfolding. There's an opening for listening to what's in the field instead of like, well, just kind of check, check, check. And then, well, I think you should be doing it like that, or I think you should be doing it like this, and let's go, like, right? There's this kind of, in breath, this moment of quiet in a way. There's this quiet space in the beginning there that really allows the client to, the answers start to come through your client instead of you telling them what to do, right?
And there's so many parts about what you just distilled that is so accurate. That is the yoga,
Yeah.
right? Like yoga is about, creating stillness and being present and listening to our bodies, right? Like in the
Yeah.
physical format of yoga, obviously there's
Yeah.
all these, if you know yoga,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different parts to it, but it's creating the stillness in order for the truth to arise. And so that is when I'm speaking with the clients, and this is something I've talked about with my team too, that it's in the listening.
Yeah.
It's our job isn't to impose our knowledge upon our client. It's to invite their truth out, to come out, and then it's to work with that information to organize it in a way that's meaningful and sensible and effective. And it's such a different perspective than a lot of architects, right? Like it's not, as designers and architects, oftentimes people are coming in and just like throwing like, oh, this is what I want it to look like.
Yeah.
But or this is what I want, how I think you should live. It's not about how I want to live. It's like it's how the client wants to live, or it's how the client's brand needs to be expressed, or it's the experience that they're creating for their client. And I can add to that conversation, and I can sort of drop a
It's a
seed of like,
co-creation. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's a co-creation. It's like, have you, have you thought about it this way?
Yeah.
And maybe they say, yeah, but that doesn't resonate. Okay. It's not my job to keep pushing. It's my
Yeah.
job to be like, to receive.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's a different approach that, I actually more and more, I have people come to me who say, and that, this is never a fun situation. I started with this architect, and all they're doing is like, they're either just drawing what they were asked to draw, or they're saying this is the way it should be, and here it is, I'm done.
Right. It's two poles.
Mm-hmm.
It's very passive or very, very active in a way, right? Like it's the two poles there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's no
And that's
balance.
not that we're in this moment where, people have so much information, like they've thought about their product, especially if they're creating, a hospitality space, or especially if they're creating a restaurant, or especially like they've done their research. They kind of have this idea of where they want to go with it, and our job is just to make it better, right?
I love it. And I'm just thinking about all these memories of, working at firms and, like I feel like what you're doing saves time in a way, not necessarily that you wanted to be a rushed process, but it's almost like it saves unnecessary overextending and unnecessary stress. I mean, I know architecture always will come with challenges, putting a building together is a whole art in itself and it can be challenging, but I remember the countless layout options like no, the client doesn't want that. No, or vice right or the architect is just imposing his or her, fantasies on the client, and they're just not aligning. They're not aligning, and then they end up in the red, especially if it's a house project, because the money's completely gone. It's
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
so. I mean, I really appreciate how you're bringing this the consciousness of yoga into all that you do. And I'm sure your clients do too, very much.
Yeah, as you were saying that, it made me think of the word advocate. That was actually what I was speaking about this week, because in our office meeting, uh, because as you pointed out, like once you putting architecture together, putting design together, you know, it is stressful, and
I know we
and
have
that
to be
is,
real about
for
that.
us,
Yeah.
yeah, like especially as the client, and in particular in residential work, clients uh, get stuck in the middle sometimes, like between a contractor and an architect, or during the construction process they happen to be there, they
Yeah.
walk on the site to see what's going on, and the client might be asked a question and expected to answer it, and or it might be that there's a
Right.
delay, or and we need to be advocates, like we are there to sort of almost protect their energy, protect their spirit as
Mm,
well, so that,
wow.
because we should filter the information, and kind of allow them, present it to them in a way that it's an easy question, instead of like, oh,
Making
look at
them
all this
panic.
technical
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what? The electrical? Like, I don't get this question. Does this mean like this, and this? And then they usually blow it out of proportion. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't understand, and why should they? It's not their
Not their
job
job.
to. And so it's like this advocate role. It's, again, it's a bit of a spiritual role. It's about, somebody said to me, um I think it was, they were using, they were talking about it being similar to a doctor, where like you've got the person who is doing the tests, who's like doing the scans or
In the
whatever
lab.
in the lab, and then it goes to the doctor, and the doctor is the one who's reading it, right? And then they're presenting it to
Right.
the patient.
Yeah.
And there's this exchange, and this honor for each role, so that the
Mhm.
patient is protected. The
Yeah.
patient only gets the information that can help them grow, instead of like all the panic that goes along with it. And I think that's really an important thing to recognize as well, uh, as a as a leader in the profession.
Rachel, can you write a book about this? I just think about like weaving that. I just thought how amazing of a book that would be, like next level 5D, like new earth, like how to run a practice, how to be the mediator on the construction site, how to, right? Like how
Mhm.
amazing would that be? I'm planting the seed. Have you written any books?
I haven't. Last year I started talking about it, but I haven't written a book, and it's actually a really good idea. It's like how, the baseline of like how to
Like,
be like an architect, but not like that architect.
yeah, like maybe that's the name of the book.
Yeah. How to be, how to be an architect, because we talk about this all the time in the industry. There's architects and there's architects, there's designers and there's designers.
Yeah.
You don't, it's not, I'm not trying to feed into like any system. Neither one is wrong, it's just different.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
And
know
different fruits come
right,
from it.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I love it. Rachel, can you share some of the projects that have really, been success stories for your clients, and ones that you feel are really an extension of what you're practicing on a spiritual level?
hmm hmm So one of our projects I'll talk about is a residential project, that was, so the client is, it's a couple, and the wife had uh, lymphoma, and she had recovered, and we were about to do work on the house that they were living in. And for whatever reason, funny enough, like I kept driving by this other house, and I kept thinking like this would be, and here in Montclair there is no land, by the way, like it's all built. So I kept driving by this house, and I kept thinking, wow, that would be like the perfect house for them, instead of working on this house that they live in now. And like the next week, I got a call from the client saying, "Hey, will you go look at this house with me and my wife?" And I was like, "Wow, this is so crazy. I kept thinking this would be a perfect house for you." But meanwhile, like we were already done with a new design,
Oh,
almost done with a new design for the house they were living in. And they ended up buying this house. And it was very, of course, this evolution of why I thought this house was great for them was because it was about how they wanted to live,
mm,
right? They wanted to be more integrated into the community. They wanted to have a better connection to the land, to the outside in their home. They wanted green building. They wanted environmental sustainability, and it was really difficult to do in the house they were living in. It was kind of like, okay, so here it's open to each other. The house is open to each other. It was kind of like of a U shape,
oh,
but it's
okay.
not really open to nature. It's open to,
Mm,
like more built environment, right? So anyway, we developed this new house in the way that they wanted to live. They were empty nesters. They are empty nesters. Their children were not yet married, but they looked to the future of them having their own families. And we developed the house so that they could all have privacy and come together. We used green materials, including 100% wool insulation throughout the entire house.
amazing. Do you have any
No VOC.
images to share of this?
of the wall
or of no, or just
of the project.
of the project?
Um, we
Not this
do.
one. Okay, you did.
Yeah, I don't think they're the images
Okay,
that I sent
okay.
you
I'm
guys.
just wondering. Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah,
you use wool insulation in
we
there as
used
well?
wool
Oh, that's
insulation.
amazing.
Yeah, we used wool insulation. And that was very interesting and bizarre because we were looking for like, what is the most green material, right? Like that was the goal. Um, we also, all of the wood stains were no VOC, all water-based, uh, real wood. It's not engineered wood so that we didn't have to worry about the VOCs in the backing.
Yeah.
All of the tiles were had recycled content, and hot water on demand. And so it was really all LED lighting, which I mean, this was maybe not now like 6 years ago, so that was just kind of coming to everyday fixtures.
Right.
um and so you know and and it changed their lives,
Wow.
right? Like their experience in their home and their experience with their family. Now the kids come and bring their young children to the space, and they have this room to breathe, but also to be together. They also can walk into town. There's a park right across the street. There's all of these assets that they wouldn't have had we have just renovated this other house.
Wow.
So it's beautiful. Also, we're working on a number of retreat houses for people right now. And those houses are, again, very much about opening to nature. So walls of glass and large doors. We have quite a few projects where you can see large doors that open to nature, or framed views.
Mm,
Maybe there's a specific tree outside, or um, uh, where you're looking at creating the memories that are connected to the
mm,
spaces. We also do a lot of community projects though, and so we're bringing in the history. We do a lot of this being outside of New York. Although we do projects all over the country, a lot of them are in this area. And because it's a fully built environment, we do I call it repurposing buildings, because quite frankly, I like the idea of, when I use the word repurpose, it reminds me that there's a history, and that
mm.
history is not erased.
Yeah.
That history is part of the structure, right?
Yeah.
So whether we've transitioned a number of churches into commercial spaces,
Yeah.
and banks into commercial spaces. But one of the other projects I talk about is a church that we did. And the beauty of it, number one, was that the church was purchased from, obviously, the congregation by the developer. And then we created a new church within the structure, so
Oh,
that because they had shrank, right? It was not as big of a membership anymore, but they weren't gone. And therefore they were allowed to sort of stay in their home,
hmm.
but in a new space that
Yeah.
also reflected them as a congregation today. Meanwhile, the rest of the building became uh, uh, utilized in a way that was meaningful. And in that building, we any structure that we removed, we saved. And so we had a lot of structural wood, which spurred a furniture line that I developed
Oh,
called
awesome.
Legend by RG. And we used the wood from the church. And part of what I kept thinking about and talking about with people was that, this wood has such a lineage. So now we have the building that has a lineage. We had the history of the church. There's a new church in it. And now there are new memories and new businesses and new
New
experiences.
objects. Yeah.
And the same with the wood,
Yeah.
all of the cosmic energy that went to grow this tree that had this lumber that was big enough for structure, and then all of the prayers that happened in this structure that now is
Nice.
infused into the wood, and now the wood has this new life in a piece of furniture that is actually like absorbing the energy of this experience, right? Like it's about it just connects to this idea that there's no beginning and there's no end. You know,
It's
it's
like the
all.
reincarnation of.
Mm-hmm,
Oh, yeah, that's
mm-hmm,
so beautiful.
mm-hmm,
And I love that you're bringing that wisdom into the design of these furniture pieces as well.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before our time runs out, we'd love to see some of the images if you would like to share, if you feel called to share them, some of the
Sure,
images of space. I'd love for the participants to see some of the
sure.
work. So, which one do you want to share first?
That's a good question. Maybe just the one with the light fixture where you can see out in nature. We'll talk about that.
Okay. With the glass, the
Yeah.
glass facade.
Yeah, either one though. I mean, honestly, I can talk about both.
Well, I'd love to look at both just to get a feeling. Yeah.
So this is, this is really talking about that connection to nature.
Hmm.
I put this image in because this gives the essence of what we do. Like we are creating a built environment, but so often, I'm what I want to help people remember is that we are part of nature.
Yeah.
There's no separation,
Yeah.
and our structures so often, uh, historically, have created separation. I mean, it was about protection, but now we've got, glass that is
Right.
sufficiently fabricated that we don't need
Yeah.
to worry that we're losing energy by having
Yeah.
too much glass, or we're getting too much sun or whatever. Um so anyway, I think that so the idea that we are part of nature, that there's an opening between inside and out, and the softness, um about that experience, and also this coming together, that we're creating spaces where people can be in community and collaborate and experience each other. I mean, really, part of what I'm trying to talk about with design, there's this idea that, like a simplicity behind it, because again, like we talked about before, about the spaciousness in design. My personal opinion is when there's too much, you actually can't see the beauty. So if everything is beautiful, and then if everything is beautiful, nothing is beautiful, like you can't focus. And so the idea for me is that you create the space that you can focus the attention on what matters. And so that's kind of the expression of this
That's so
image.
beautiful. That's so beautiful. Yeah. Would you like to share the next one?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the view through to the pine trees there. There's a moment that I love in this next one that we were looking at prior, which is actually the steps just
Hmm.
delicately curving and meeting the wall there. Yeah, what this is this project this it's not the same building, right? It's a different
No,
project. Yeah.
it's a different project. It's a different project. And this is talking, you can see here on the right hand bottom here, this is actually one of the tables from the legend line. And one of the things that I find so precious about it is that, if you were to step back a little bit, you could see all the rings of the trees. And again, there's this, if you allow yourself to dwell in the moment, you start to recognize again the history, and that without all of that energy, this wouldn't exist. I think some of what makes design so interesting is how we decide to dwell in it, how we decide to, contemplate it, how we decide to engage with it. And that's kind of part of the invitation that I'm setting forth as well, is if you just see it this way, you start to see also the interconnectedness of humanity. Because not only did we talked about the evolution of the tree into the table, but when we think about a structure, and we think about, first somebody had to consider building on this piece of land, and then someone had to design it, and then someone, there's hundreds of people building it, and then the contents of it, there's thousands of people who have created the contents of the house. And like, again, back to this conversation about the values in my office, like every single person, whether it was scheduling the delivery or whether it was designing the piece, mattered, or it wouldn't be here,
You
right?
know what it reminds me of? Like, well, two things come to mind. It's like the building of Chartres Cathedral, let's say, right? Like the
Uh-huh.
craft, the stories, like I mean that and those that took like a gazillion years, or Gaudi's,
Mm-hmm.
Sagrada
Mm-hmm.
Familia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on this level as well, like as you speak, it's like everybody is like inscribing their consciousness, their experiences, everything into the story of place, into the
Mm-hmm.
story of the structure
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Yeah, and then bringing these pieces that you design to give it life, even though it's so minimal,
Mm-hmm.
it emanates, right? It emanates its story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this specific image is really kind of bringing that reminder to me, because there's these different artists, right? And the small piece of art in the middle is from South Dakota, and it's from the Native American Indian uh, uh, artist. And then the piece on the left is the homeowner's relative who created that piece. And then you've got the bowls that are handmade pottery. Uh, the piece on the left is another artist who is creating to share. So there's all these. So this piece, because it's this collection of artists, including that, what you kind of see is this horizontal um, natural color element, that's like just a handmade piece of paper, that wasn't necessarily designed or developed as art. Maybe that was going to be wrapped around something, or maybe it was, but there's just this textural to this collection. And I think one of the things, when we move into the interiors of people's homes, because of course we do both architecture and design, um, my conversation is very much like, what have you collected? What is meaningful to you? You know, you uh, have you is it are they stones? Are they these silver glass cups, or are they like much more formal items? And how can we bring those into your space in a way that they're easily understandable? Because collections, quite frankly, are not usually very easy to understand. They just look like this like massive stuff. And but they're meaningful. When people have a collection, it might be the gift that their children gave them every year for their birthday, right? And maybe they're like the size of, a marble. I don't, or they're the size of, a cup. And you have to find ways so that as you move through your space, you can also recognize your lineage. And I don't mean like living in the past. I mean
Yeah.
honoring the past.
Yeah.
I think so much of life is like honoring the past so we can plan for the future, therefore we can live in the moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
It's then I think it's a beautiful place to wrap to kind of come to close, where now it's you're creating spaces that inspire people to grow into their futures while being rooted in their histories, right? That is actually what the how you phrased it.
Hmm.
And then if there's this balance then, right? And
Hmm.
maybe that's really what brings us to the present moment the best, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's what, I think the present moment is all there really is, right? So that's our goal. That's our goal, is to be in the present moment.
Well, Rachel, this has been so inspiring and, on all levels, from learning how you lead your office to how you work with your clients, how you listen to them to help them give birth to a space that nourishes their souls. Um, every down to every single piece that you've crafted, and I'm so inspired, and I can't wait for you to write a book. The book is coming through, Rachel. It's coming through. I just love your stories about being the mediator, the advisor between the contractor and the
Hmm.
client, and really taking that as a role of integrity and consciousness and a certain level of responsibility there. So it's just been so enriching. I thank you so much. Um, I would love to hear from the participants. If anybody has any questions they'd like to share, ask to Rachel, be great. You've got some time until the end of this session. Any questions coming through? And if anything else is coming through, streaming through, Rachel, that you'd like. Oh, and I'd love to, before we even dive into the questions, yeah, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh,
And
sure.
what are you up to? Like, we'd love to share your link.
So yeah, so you can reach me. Our website is rhgdesign.com, and I'm on Instagram. I had a brief moment where I didn't, but we've got it back.
Okay, good.
At it's at RHG Design. I think, yeah, when while we're waiting to see if any questions come in, I will share, like, it's so interesting. We actually recently finished this restaurant. It's a superfood restaurant,
Oh, nice.
and it's been really fun because those are the types of foods that I tend to eat. And when you were talking about how you bring clients to you, and through your interests, through your values, through your conversations, and the whole, it's been a very long road for them, because we started before COVID, then it paused, then started again. And so we've been waiting a long time, and they finally opened. They're literally down the street from my office, and the whole half of the team is there practically every day, because it's very clean eating. It's low sugar, superfood focused, vegan. And it's been really exciting to be able to create a space that reflects the food, and then also be able to live in it and experience it. And just really, like, amazing visionary people who want to bring this kind of experience to others. So it's been really fun. That's been a real fun one.
It must be so fulfilling, Rachel, really, to be able to craft a space like that for
Hmm.
superfoods. That's amazing. We've got some
Hmm.
questions coming in from Heather. Is your furniture line available to the general public?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's there's a website for it as well, Legend by RG. Um, we sell direct. We do sell to designers as well, but yeah, we sell direct.
Awesome. Oh, that's
Yeah, thanks for the
beautiful.
question.
This is from Kata, who I interviewed yesterday. She takes a really spiritual approach as well to interior design. I resonate so much with Rachel's approach to architecture and life. Thank you for the inspirational chat. Yes, a book. I know how important it is. Yeah, that's
You know, Kata, I listened to your interview yesterday too, and I felt like we were kindred spirits.
totally, totally. I was going to mention that too. It really feels like a beautiful bridge.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Kata. I'm so happy you joined. Hannah, can you work remotely or do you have to visit the site? I'm thinking of building a home in Gambia. Oh my God. Well, I'm a Nigerian. That's amazing, but I would like people to visit for holidays.
That's so interesting that you asked. Yes, we do work remote. In fact, after this, I have a call with a client who is building or developing a boutique hotel in South America that we're looking to work on with him.
Yeah.
And so we do work remote. It's absolutely possible. And actually one of our projects that's more local here, our client is in um, the Middle East. So, we've
Oh, that's
found ways to work
awesome.
around it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Hmm.
I feel like that's really a part of the future. There's something asking us to go global without, obviously, it being too overwhelming for the firm or the office. And I think there is a beauty to be able to visit the site physically. But I don't know, the paradigm is changing and, I think you can, yeah, just like what's happening now, you're attracting clients from different parts of the globe. Well, Hannah, why don't you get in touch with Rachel to discuss? I just, if you're open to that, oh my God, I'm so funny. I'm like,
Oh
just
my
like
God, that would be
passing her
so
on.
amazing. No, it would be so amazing. I think, it's one of the things, quite honestly, I find people around the world are so spiritual, and the understanding of the conversation that we're having is wider
Mm,
when you are open to a global perspective.
mm.
Um, and it's a moment, I think, that the reason it's becoming more global is because, at least these conversations, is because we're coming together,
Yeah.
right? Like
Oh,
it,
yeah.
it's it's
It's
this
so
it's this
simple, but it's
evolution.
so profound what you just said. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And we're coming together, like, to create the future that we actually really believe in, and it's part of our DNA, it's part of our lineage. We're being called in.
You just answered the question I actually missed asking you, which is what the future architecture, what you feel your vision for your future architecture. But I feel like so much of what you talked about is that. So
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
I do want to hold space for all these questions so coming through. Um, This is from Tammy. Are there others who want to collaborate from land design, architects, designer, landscapers to create holistic spaces? How do we gather and share? Ooh, good question, Tammy. Yeah, and it's actually
Mm.
beautiful what you were just linked to what you were just saying right now.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think that is an excellent question. There are definitely, I find it's interesting how as things unfold, how many people there are who want to be in this conversation, right? Like it, I think people are just quiet about it because it hasn't been, I don't want to say normalized, but it hasn't been welcome. Again, I was told back in grad school, I was designing a wellness space
Oh,
for my thesis project, and I was told, like, that's not even, like, that's not important, right? But I think there's a lot of people like us
yeah.
who their root is in this. I mean, we need to start an organization. We need to start a website of collaboration, or some
I've
sort of
got tons of
Instagram.
ideas streaming through Rachel about this. I think it's a
Hmm.
fantastic idea. And there was
Hmm.
another um, get a participant audience member who asked something like, is there a directory of all of you people, just a
Hmm.
simple. So yeah, thank you, Tammy, for asking. And we'd love to know, share if you are an architect. I mean, you could send a message to my team, myself. It would be great to know, who else is out there who's interested in in building the new earth with us.
Hmm.
This is from Christian Kyriakou, who is a geomancer, also an architect, and I interviewed him the last series. More a comment: respect from an architect to another architect, Rachel. Have also worked in New York for a year. The mention of Chartres shows us that the unified spirit of the time allowed it to be built in 25 years. Our building industry could learn more from this. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. I just had a conversation with another architect this morning about that.
Really?
Slowing the process.
Oh, Christian Chartres is in our field then today.
Mhm.
Amazing. Um, from Kathy, I hope Rachel doesn't mind that I will make signage for my home, assigning the reminder of being in the moment by quoting her words. Oh, that's so beautiful. Honoring the past so we can plan for the future, so we can live in the moment. The goal to be present in the moment. And she wrote your name, Rachel Grachowski, 3-18-2022. Oh, that's so beautiful.
That is really beautiful. I feel super honored that that resonated with you.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. I'm very touched. This is from an anonymous. Thanks for your careful approach to the spaces and quality of materials you use. We often ask our clients if they have an allergic reaction to materials. So I'm assuming you're also an architect, specifically textiles, carpet, paint, sealers. We tend to use cotton and denim, insulation, and wool carpets. Beautiful. Beautiful. So interesting, Rachel. So this is from Kathy again. So when is the book and what's the title? So interesting. A book needs to be birthed through you. And
It
yeah,
sounds like it.
I
It
really
sounds
think
like
it would
it.
be really valuable with all of your years of practical experience. Yeah, amazing.
I
Yeah,
love the encouragement. Thank you all.
oh, it's so wonderful. Oh, these questions were brilliant. I love it. And one more time, can you repeat your furniture line to
It's
everybody?
Legend by RG.
Okay, Legend by RG. So
Yeah, I
every
think
and I
you can
find
find
it
it
on your
also
website. Yeah.
on our website. Yeah,
And the website's been shared in the chat from Christy, my assistant. So you guys can go directly to Rachel's site there. And yes, whoever wants to collaborate to design their sanctuaries, reach out to her.
absolutely.
Oh,
This
it
is
was so beautiful. Thank you.
this has been such an honor, and just collaborating with you and being here, and thank you. Just thank you so much.
Yeah, it's really an honor. I look forward to future collaborations and having you again on a talk. It would be amazing. Before we go, tomorrow we are interviewing Karen Crowley and Dominique Suzani. They're in Europe and they are authors and energetic geometry experts. Karen is actually I believe she's finished it, but she's coming out with a book about the sacred architecture of Santa Fe. She's American actually, and Dominique is French, and they work with investigating sacred solar architecture, the ancient sites, old churches, and they lead workshops for earth energies, geomancy, and if you check out their Instagram, they're always posing in front of these huge megaliths, these huge rocks, standing stones in various parts of Europe. So they lead groups there. And I'm so curious about these stones as well. So they're going to share all of their wisdom and investigations on the energetics of sacred sites. So don't miss it. Join live 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. And what else was I going to say? Yeah, please share. Send us an email. Are you an architect, a designer? Do you have visions for the new earth? Share with us what you have received and what you are inspired about. So so we can continue the conversation. So this is great. Rachel, thank you again. And I look forward to connecting again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks everybody for being here.
Many blessings to your team and all your work moving forward.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye,
Bye. Be
Rachel.
well.
See you.